Please be seated. The court is now back in session. I hand over to the prosecution to continue his line of questioning to this civil party. You may now proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. M. Un, just earlier, we were talking about the political training sessions being held at Borikela and the presentation given by Mr. Pol Pot during the opening day, which you attended. He talked about the distinction between friends and enemies, regardless of family relationship. Now, among or aside from the other CPK leaders who were present there, who was entitled to determine who was considered an enemy or a friend? Is this something that any party cadre was able to identify and decide if a certain person was a friend or an enemy, or was this distinction made only by a higher ranking cadre or leader?
I would like to respond to this question based on my personal observation. In a nutshell, members in the party were powerless. They only listened to a circular issued by age 70. They had to comply with this circular age 70. Whenever they hear about this circular, they had to abide by this circular. And I did not know who issued this circular, and I did not know why people had to respect this so much.
Est-ce que vous-même, vous avez eu en main?
Did you yourself have in possession this circular? And if so, who gave it to you?
Let me clarify it. I have never received this circular, but I was influenced by this circular. Actually, this circular was meant to be applied in different places. For example, if it was administered to the ministry or village level or cooperative level or so, then they had to implement this circular strictly.
Est-ce que cette circulaire
And in that circular, was it identify who had the capacity to identify an enemy and eliminate that enemy?
To be honest, I am not trying to provide any mitigating circumstance also to anyone, but I think that everyone who saw the circular had to comply with this circular very strictly. And I also wonder why it was so powerful. I observe the situation at that time that the cooperative was empowered with authority to arrest people. For example, the leaders of a cooperative was vested with the power to arrest and kill people. But if you ask me who issued this circular or order, I did not know. I did not know. But people had to respect this circular very strictly.
Just to return to the subject of Pol Pot and the speech that he delivered at Borikela on the first opening session, and he made a distinction between friends and enemies. Did he make a distinction between enemies burrowing within the ranks and enemies from the outside?
During the Democratic Cambodia period, Pol Pot and others were very vigilant of the enemies borrowing from within. They said if the external enemies, they could see them easily, but the internal enemies, the enemy borrowing from within, were invisible. Then they were very dangerous to the party. That's why they did not trust people. At that time, there were a sense of mistrust, and everyone had to be cautious and vigilant at all time. At that time, any individuals who had any contradiction within their cooperative or communities, then they would be put at the risk. In other words, they may be eliminated.
Merci. Vous avez
Thank you. You said that Pol Pot talked about smashing enemies. And today you talk about the elimination of enemies. Can you please specify exactly what the leaders meant by smashing enemies or eliminating enemies?
Council Sonoran. President, witness, please hold on. The National Council for Mr. Nguyen Chia, you may proceed. Council Sonoran. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. I am of the opinion that the question being put by the prosecution is leading by nature, because he is now asking the witness to speculate in his answer. There is nothing precise in his questions to the witness. Thank you, Mr. President.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. I was simply seeking to learn whether Mr. Civil Party could tell this court whether in the context of the time when leaders talked about smashing or elimination, what this meant exactly. I wasn't trying to ask a leading question. The Civil Party can simply provide an explanation as to what he believes what was meant by this in the context of 1975 and 1979.
The President, the objection is not sustained. The Chamber wishes to hear the response from the Civil Party to the question posed by the co-prosecutor. Mr. Civil Party, you are now supposed to provide that response. And as a Civil Party, you ought to listen carefully to the questions. And if you understand the questions posed to you, and you can answer as precisely as yes or no, then proceed to do so. Please do not speculate. Do not respond to questions that you yourself are not certain you can provide the answer. So, answer based on what you saw, you witnessed, experienced. And again, try to avoid speculating, because if you speculate, your statement will be less valuable. So please respond to the question concerning the term smash. According to your knowledge, what does the term smash mean? Response. To smash is not the term I speculate. It's the true term used during that time. To smash means to execute someone. So the person had to be taken away and smashed, mean executed.
Merci. Je voudrais en venir maintenant au discours prononcé par M. Nunchia.
Thank you. Let's return to the topic of the speech delivered by Mr. Nunchia.
Le 23 août dernier,
On the 23rd of August, you stated that at the end of Pol Pot's speech, Nunchia repeated some of the phrases and words that were uttered by Mr. Pol Pot before he delivered his own speech. Did Mr. Nunchia talk about the Great Leap Forward or talk about the enemies who were to be eliminated?
Response. As indicated before, each speaker proceeded to the next topic. One would pick up briefly from the previous speaker, and one would say, as the party already indicated, we had to follow the instructions by the party, otherwise we would eventually be responsible for our acts. And as already stated, Mr. Pol Pot already had something to say, then Nuon Chea, then Khieu Samphan, and each respectively had some more things to say.
Est-ce que cela signifie que vous n'avez pas remarqué quoi que ce soit dans le discours de Nunchia?
Does that mean that you didn't take note of anything in Nunchia's speech that would have demonstrated that he was in disagreement with Mr. Pol Pot?
The President, Mr. Suvopati, could you please hold on? Counsel for Mr. Nunchia, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that's a leading question. The witness testified none of the sort. The question can be rephrased.
Merci. Je vais reformuler pour gagner du temps, Monsieur le Président.
Very well. For the sake of time efficiency, I'll reformulate my question. Did you note anything in Nunchia's speech that would have showed that he was in disagreement with Mr. Pol Pot and what Mr. Pol Pot stated in his speech with respect to the Great Leap Forward?
Response. I did not say Mr. Nunchia opposed or was not in agreement with Pol Pot. I was saying that before Mr. Nunchia said something, he had to pick up a few words from Pol Pot before he stated his words. And before he said anything, he would refer to what Pol Pot had already said.
Jeudi dernier,
Last Thursday, Mr. Suvopati, you testified that, and the following can be found in the draft transcript during the time slot of 2:34 p.m. and 2:37. The following, and I quote what you said, sir. With respect to what Mr. Nunchia said at Borikela, those who infiltrated the party had to be found. He was very firm and affirmative on this subject. He said that as leaders, those who had infiltrated the ranks had to be unearthed. Now, in Nunchia's speeches, did he provide any specific examples or names of cadres and party members who had been labeled as traitors or infiltrated enemies? Did he provide any names?
The President, Civil Party, could you please hold on? Counsel for Mr. Nuntia, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the same transcript shows that this question is repetitive, as on page 82 of the English draft transcript. The following question can be found. Did Mr. Nuntia explain further on who would be categorized as those who were infiltrating the internal party? And then the civil party proceeded to answer this question. So this question has already been asked by the civil parties, and prosecution should move on to topics that have not been covered yet.
Si je peux réagir, Monsieur le Président.
If I may respond, Mr. President, this question with respect to the specific names was not posed. He had previously been asked a question with respect to the kinds of enemies who were identified, but not any possible disclosures of names. And so the answer to my question is rather straightforward. It can be followed by a yes or a no.
The President, the objection is not sustained. The Chamber wishes to hear the response from the civil party to the question posed by the prosecutor. Mr. Civil Party, you may now respond. Civil Party, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, could you please repeat your question?
Oui, tout à fait.
Yes, of course. My question is, if Nuntia, during his speech delivered at Borekela, disclosed any names of party cadres who had been revealed as infiltrated enemies or traitors.
Response. I wish to also say that it doesn't mean that Mr. Nuntia did not mention names. In the meeting, he indicated that everyone should not follow what Mr. Koitun had been doing, because he was the party betrayer. And he also referred to Kaimir, alias Cha, and we were told not to follow the footsteps of these individuals. Otherwise, we also would end up being executed as these people.
Est-ce qu'il a juste donné ces deux noms?
Did he just provide those names, or did he show any documents with respect to those individuals?
Response. He did not just show one name. He showed several names in a document, but I'm sorry, I cannot recall all the other names.
Et ces noms qu'il a montrés sur un document.
And of the names that he showed in the documents, was he holding the document? Or was it a document that was being circulated to all participants of that political education session?
Response. No document was handed down to participants. He was seen sitting giving speech, and in his speech he would mention names as indicated.
Est-ce qu'il vous a dit qui était ce Koitun?
Did he tell you who Koitun was? Did he tell you who Keomis was? Those people who were being identified in his speech.
Response. I stated there were several documents, not just a single document about this, but I just can't recollect them all. Chan Chakrai, who was the commander of the army, was also mentioned along with Khoi Thun. So these were the wordings I heard from Mr. Nguyen Chia during the session. And I also observed that several people would be arrested eventually, and I was very afraid to say anything back then.
Concernant les intellectuels et étudiants de l'étranger,
With respect to intellectuals who had studied abroad, you testified that Nguyen Chia had, in one manner or another, attacked them during those sessions. Did Nguyen Chia describe exactly what those intellectuals who had studied abroad were being blamed of?
Response. The term attack here was meant to refer to what he said about people who were educated abroad, who received foreign doctrine, and these individuals could pose some risk to the revolution, to his revolution.
Merci, Monsieur le témoin.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. And during that same speech, did Mr. Nguyen Chia talk about traitors who were members of the enemy networks? Was the word network uttered by Mr. Nguyen Chia on that particular occasion?
Response. Not Mr. Nguyen Chia alone who mentioned the enemy network in the session. People at lower level, including the chief of the communes, also used the term network very often. For example, one who did not do things to benefit the country would not be perceived to be someone who we should follow. So we only follow those who prove beneficial to the country. So these are the language we used.
Est-ce que vous avez entendu
And during Nguyen Chia's speech, or perhaps during the speeches made by other CPK leaders, while speaking about Khoi Thun and others, did they make reference to the spy networks?
Response. I'm afraid that the question is repetitive because the term network is rather broad and it was mentioned, and I'm afraid that I will also be repetitive in my response to that question concerning networking. The President, Mr. Civil Party, you shall now listen carefully to the question, because at times we know that you stray away from the line of questioning. So you are now advised to just stay put or go straight forward to the questions. If not, then you would be put other questions so that you respond to the intended questions. The Chamber would like to inform you that as a civil party, you are supposed to respond to all questions by the party who is putting the question, unless you decide not, and please respond to the question being asked rather than going further than that. Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, I shall rephrase my question. Now, whilst speaking about enemies or traitors, he talked about Chiang Kai-shek, Koi Toon, and others. And did he talk about spies? Did he also talk about networks of spies?
Response: yes, he did. He talked about spy network. You may proceed.
est-ce qu'il a dit quels étaient les réseaux d'espions qui étaient actifs
Did Mr. Nunchia talk about the spy networks that were operating in democratic Kampuchea, who they were and where they were from?
Response: yes. You can continue. I should say yes. Civil party. I wish to also add that there were accusations, and these referred to those from America and from Russia or Soviet back then.
Merci. Est-ce que vous-même vous vous souvenez des
Thank you. And do you yourself have a recollection of the names of those who were purportedly from the American and Soviet spy networks active in democratic Kampuchea?
Response: yes, I do. For the American affiliated agent, we refer to them as the CIA, while for the Russian, then people could have been implicated as a KGB agent. And also the UN agent, or the aggressive UN agent, as the Khmer Rouge would frame their terms.
Lorsque vous avez entendu Nunchia parler
When you heard Nunchia talk about people who had infiltrated the party ranks, and when he cited names and disclosed the identity of traitors, what was your reaction? What happened afterwards? Did you become fearful?
Response: I think I was not alone who was fearful having heard this expression. I just say that, yes, I was fearful.
Merci. Je vais maintenant en venir à aux interventions de M. Koussampa.
Thank you. I wish now to turn to Mr. Kyo Sampan's speeches, and my question is the same. Did you take note of anything in Mr. Kyo Sampan's speeches that contained elements that he may not have been in full agreement with what was said by Mr. Pol Pot and Mr. Nunchia previously?
Response: before he started his speech, he would use the same expression as shared by the other previous speakers. However, he indicated that to uncover the traitors of the revolution and the infiltrated enemies, we were asked to understand how to work more, eat less, rest less. But that's what I heard from him.
Merci.
Thank you. Last Thursday, one of the civil party co-lawyers had read out a passage from your civil party application, and with your leave, Mr. President, I wish to quote once again from the same passage. However, I wish to ask some different questions, and so I'll therefore I'll read from the passage, which is under D22/3963 on ERN Khmer page 00573979, on ERN English page 00751867, and on French ERN page 007861886. Perhaps, Mr. President, you would be so kind as to have this document placed on the screen.
The President, you may proceed.
Merci. Alors je vais lire la première partie de ce qui vous avait été lu.
Thank you very much. I'll begin by quoting from your civil party application, and then I'll be asking some questions. Now, you said on the fourth or fifth day I saw Khieu Samphan speaking. He reminded us of what Pol Pot and Un Chia said. After that, Khieu Samphan talked about Angkar's strategic policies. Khieu Samphan encouraged us to look back at the victory of the party and the victory achieved by Angkar, and to do our best to follow Angkar's directions. If the party wanted us to do anything, we would need to accomplish it at all costs. I'll end there. What exactly were Angkar's political strategies, and if Khieu Samphan had provided any explanations with respect to those strategies?
Response. I think you may need to rephrase the question because I do not get it.
En fait, dans l'extrait que j'ai lu,
Now, in the passage that I've just read out, and is a French translation of your written statements, you talked about Nun Chia's explanation of the strategic policies, the political strategic policies of Angkar. Can you please tell us what you think he meant by the strategic policies of Angkar based on Khieu Samphan's explanations?
Response. Strategic policies here do not belong to Mr. Khieu Samphan alone. They belong to the party as a whole. However, as the person in the State Presidium, he told us what we expected to do, and he emphasized strongly to the trainees that people who were perceived as the members of the party had to be vigilant and cautious because the term infiltrated enemies had to be identified. So we, members of the party, had to know our role and duties. I think I need more time to dwell on this, and I may ask Mr. President if I am allowed to also add some more points. The President, you are expected to respond to only the question being asked. If party would like to ask you more, then they would put some more questions. Don't worry, you will still be questioned by other parties to the proceeding as well, so you will have some more time to say more on this.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Il y a donc dans l'extrait que j'ai lu une autre phrase auquel je voudrais
In the passage I've just read aloud, there's another sentence
une phrase que vous attribuez à Kusampan.
which you stated was made by Mr. Kyo Sampong. Quote, "If the party wanted us to do anything, we would need to accomplish it at all costs."
Vous avez tout à l'heure également parlé de cela. Est-ce que
You, Mr. Civil Party, also made reference to this, and as a party cadre, were you entirely submissive to Ankar?
Response. Indeed, after hearing this, everyone must absolutely follow it.
pour vous, à l'époque, vous étiez à Boré-Kéla,
And for you, during the time that you were at Boré-Kéla,
était l'Ankar exactement?
who exactly was Ankar?
Est-ce qu'il y avait plusieurs niveaux dans l'Ankar?
Were there several echelons within Ankar? And who held the highest rank?
Response. To my understanding, Ankar comprised of several people. It can be referred to those who could make a decision. So Ankar could be a body of 3 people or more. And at that time, the person who held the highest authority was Pol Pot.
Merci. Est-ce que vous avez entendu parler
Thank you.
lors de cette réunion,
And during that meeting,
lors du comité permanent?
the interpreter kindly requests the co-prosecutor to repeat the question.
សូមឆ្លើយតបឈ្មោះថា
Response. The standing committee was not just heard during the study session. I even got to know the term when I was at the base.
Est-ce qu'à la base, est-ce que lorsque vous étiez à la base, vous receviez
And at the base, did you receive or did leaders receive any instructions from the standing committee?
Response. For me, I was responsible for receiving instructions from my superior, and I know nothing more than this.
Thank you. I'll continue reading D22 stroke 3000. 3963. And talking about Kyosampan, you said that he asked all of the cadres to pay attention to the new people who he saw as having feudalist ideologies and trends. Kyosampan clearly stressed that in order to uncover enemies burrowing from within, easily and clearly, we needed to assign much hard labour to the new and base people. Then they could no longer hide among ourselves. he also said about our comrades who were taking the course, if any of you didn't fulfill the objectives assigned, you too would be considered enemies and would be eliminated. When Khieu Samphan talked about the new people as being impregnated with feudalism or steeped in feudalism, can you tell us what you knew about feudalism at the time, and were you told what the feudal class actually was?
The President, witness, please hold on. The National Defense Council for Mr. Khieu Samphan, you may proceed. Council Kung Samon. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make an objection to the assumption that what was written in this document was the statement by Mr. Khieu Samphan. Actually, this was taken from document the 3962 was the statement by the civil party himself, and he claims that this statement belongs to Mr. Khieu Samphan, and I would like to object against the assumption that this was the statement made by Mr. Khieu Samphan, and the prosecution should not consider this as the statement by Mr. Khieu Samphan. It should be constituted the statement by the witness, by the civil party himself.
C'est gentil.
Well, that's very kind of the defence to remind me of that. In fact, I was just reading the statement of the civil party who had attributed certain words to Khieu Samphan. So these are indeed the views of the civil party himself that we're listening to today. What he heard in the class given by Khieu Samphan at Borikela. I really don't see the point of this objection, Mr. President. I think that the question was put perfectly clearly without any possibility for doubt.
The President, witness is instructed to respond to the question. Civil party. Mr. President, can the prosecutor be directed to put the question again, because I cannot recall the last question posed.
Oui. Donc,
yes. In the extract that I read from your civil party statement, you said that Khieu Samphan asked the cadres to pay special attention to the new people who were steeped in feudalism, but did he explain to you what feudalism was at that time when you were attending the training session in Borikela?
At the time, I heard the word feudalism, and I did not actually bother to find out what it meant at that time. And of course, the word feudalism was mentioned in his speech, but I did not understand his motivation of using these words, and I did not even understand what feudalism was all about.
lorsque, selon vous, Khieu Samphan a demandé à tous les cadres...
When Khieu Samphan asked all of the cadres to pay attention to the new people, did he explain what that meant, to pay particular attention to the new people?
According to my observation, at that times they were very vigilant. Everyone were under surveillance, and they had undercovers who observe other people's behavior. Particularly, they paid attention to the 17 April people or the new people. That was the words used in his political training session, which Mr. Kyu Sampon conducted.
Merci. Et j'ai une
Thank you. Another question on that particular extract, because you said that Kyo Sampan clearly stressed that in order to uncover enemies burrowing from within, we needed to assign much hard labor to the new people. Why, in your view, from what you heard Kyo Sampan say, did these people need to be given hard labor in order to uncover them? How did hard labor uncover such people?
On this point, I still recall what he told us and the political lines at that time. They wanted to uncover the enemy burrowing from within, and in doing so, we had to assign much hard labors. We had to give them a lot of works, little food to eat, so that we could uncover the enemies from within. That's what he mentioned in the session. I was rather terrified myself, and my colleagues were a bit terrified as well upon hearing that statement.
Merci. Est-ce que, à part les thèmes
Thank you.
qui ont déjà été couverts,
Apart from the topics that we have already covered in these questions, the Great Leap Forward, the enemies, the new people, did Kyo Sampan or Nunchia talk about other subjects at the training session that you can remember?
In that political training school, they actually discuss other topics as well. And I did not understand his motive of making that statement. At that time, I could not do anything except to do something to save my life.
Donc, si j'ai bien compris, vous ne vous souvenez pas.
So, if I get you right, you don't remember any other subjects that were brought up by different speakers at that political training session.
Yes, you are right. I do not recall.
Merci. J'ai une toute dernière question.
Thank you. I have one last question. Last Thursday at the hearing, you quoted a Khmer Rouge slogan that they used against their enemies, and that is, to keep you is no gain, to lose you is no loss. During the political sessions in Borikela, did the leaders of Democratic Kampuchea use certain slogans like that one? And if so, could you perhaps tell us which ones?
I do not recall all the slogans. I remember that particular slogan. That's what he said at that time. Keeping you is of no gain and losing you is of no loss. I could not elaborate further, but that's what I can recall among other slogans used. That is all for my answer to your question.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Civil Party, for your time. Mr. President, Your Honours, that brings me to the end of my questions. Thank you.
The President, I would like to now turn to my fellow colleague on the bench. If Judge on the bench have any question to the civil party. Since there is no question from judges at the bench, I would like to now give the floor to the lawyers or the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chie. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom, and good morning to you, Mr. Emun. I will this morning start with a certain number of questions relating to how you came to be a civil party. And I will speak slowly for the benefit of the translators. And my first question to you, Mr. Emun, is how did you first find out about the ECCC and the proceedings that take place here?
Response. The reason why I knew the existence of the ECCC was because I have been waiting for a long time for it. I did not know where it was located, but one day, one of my relatives from Kampong Cham province, he asked me to find the documentation center of Cambodia office. And then when we got there, they talked to us about the victim information form, and then I learned about that information, and I actually know about the Khmer Rouge Tribunal was because I went there and I met Mr. Sosarun, who was a person who guided the guest over there.
Could you tell us a little bit more about Mr. Sao Sarun? What was his function? Let me rephrase the question. Who was this Mr. Sao Sarun?
Not Sao Saran, rather Saw Saran. He was a driver. He takes foreign tourists touring in Cambodia.
And did I understand you correctly that Mr. Sao Sarin works at DC Chem, or was that a translation issue?
Mr. Saw Sarun is not a staff member of the Documentation Center of Cambodia. He is a farmer.
Then I misunderstood. My apologies. You spoke about the victim information form, and just to be clear on the issue, who gave you your first victim information form?
I received this form from the Documentation Center of Cambodia. That was the first times when I encountered with that form. And then with my suffering in life, particularly the vivid memory of the loss of my parents as well as my relatives. So I had to search for a venue to file my complaint.
And so you were given a victim information form, and am I correct in understanding that that is the first information form that you submitted on the 25th of January 2010?
That is correct.
And is it correct that you wrote this first, that the information contained on this first victim information form was written by you in your own handwriting? Is that correct?
I hand wrote it in the early part of the information form, and in the latter part I asked the documentation center of Cambodia staff to assist me in writing, but I did provide them the information.
You asked DZCAM to assist you in the writing just to avoid understanding. Did you write both applications yourself, or were you assisted by DZCAM in actually writing one of these applications?
Just clarification. I asked the staff member of the DC camp to assist in filling the application form in the letter in the second form, but in the first form I wrote it myself.
And when you wrote this first form, were you helped by anybody in writing that first form?
For the handwriting application I submitted to the court, I did it myself without any assistance from anyone, but I only asked a letter to the DC camp to help me fill in other parts. The President, Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't want to interrupt here, but here we're talking about the first form and the second form without any reference numbers from the case file being given. A document has already been given the civil party. It's D22/9663. I don't know if he has the other one in front of him, and perhaps it would be easier for him to, in answering his questions, to have both forms so that he could be clear about which one we're talking about when we're talking about the first form. Otherwise, it may lead to some confusion in the responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the suggestion. I think it is correct that the civil party will have to see both statements, and we will be handing both statements to the civil party. For now, I don't think there's any misunderstanding on the part of the civil party. He has indicated quite clearly that he wrote the first application all by himself, and the second application, for that he was helped by DC Cam. So my questions for now are general in nature, and I choose to not confuse the witness with the actual document numbers. I will, once I speak about the actual documents, I will provide the witness with the actual documents and their reference number. So I would like to proceed, considering that the witness seems to understand perfectly well which applications I am talking about. I am looking at, okay, I see that I can proceed. When you wrote your first application, Mr. M. Un, was Mr. Sa Sarin present?
No, he was not.
And to avoid any confusion, could you explain what exactly the role of Mr. Sa Sarin was in your civil party application?
I do not quite catch the question. Can you please repeat your question?
Certainly. You mentioned Mr. Sa Sarin just now. Can you explain what the role of Mr. Sa Sarin was in you filing a victim information form before the ECCC?
Since you were the defense lawyer, I did not know what to say. But actually, I did not know who he was. But before, during the Democratic Cambodia period, he was the driver with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs during that period.
Then let me try to simplify the question even more. What does Mr. Sa Sarin do today? You have indicated he is a farmer. Is he a farmer where you are also a farmer?
Are you asking the lawyer or you are asking me? The President. Witness, you are instructed to respond to the question. All the parties put the questions to you. He is not putting the questions to other parties in these proceedings. I have already told you that you will be asked with many more questions by other parties. That's why I have warned you that you should respond to the question as it is being put to you, and you should try to avoid diverting from the questions and talk about other unnecessary statements or things. You have to respond to the question as it is being asked. Thank you. I actually heard through the translation that they mentioned lawyers. That's why I did not respond to the question. Well, actually, Mr. Sosaren is a farmer, and so am I.
So, do I understand from your statement that you know each other because you are farmers in the same region?
ខ្ញុំសូម
I knew Mr. Sosaren, and Mr. Sosaren used to work with my brothers, and now he was a farmer in Mandulkiri province. I am a farmer, but I am in Kampong Cham province. We are farmers, but I do the farmings in the rice paddy, and Mr. Sosaren work in the plantation. That's what I would like to distinguish between the status of being farmers here.
Thank you for that clarification. I will again try to ask a simple question to get the issue clear. What did Mr. Sarin tell you about the ECCC?
Back then, Mr. Sarin told me that if I still had a painful memory of my past, I should go to the documentation center of Cambodia.
Thank you. That is a very clear answer. Did you discuss with Mr. Sarin your memories from the DK era?
Response. After that, I talked to him about the process of filing the complaint because he used to work at the foreign ministry. So I was told how I could lodge my application. This is how it works.
And as far as you know, did Mr. Sarin attend these political training sessions at Boré Kela?
Response. He himself said that he once attended a political session, but not the same session as the one I attended. The President. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Mr. Civil Party. It is now an appropriate moment for the lunch adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn. But the session today is fully adjourned. The next session will be resumed by tomorrow at 9 a.m. For tomorrow's session, the Chamber continues to hear the testimony of the civil party. Questions continue to be put by counsels for Mr. Nunji and the other two defense teams. The Chamber wishes to inform the public and parties to the proceeding that there is no hearing this afternoon because the Chamber is holding a trial management meeting which is in closed session. Mr. Am Eun, the Chamber has not completed hearing your testimony, so we would like you to come back to our tomorrow session commencing at 9 a.m. again. The court officer is now instructed to assist with the vessel unit to ensure that Mr. Civil Party can be properly assisted and along with the reserved witness. and ensure that Mr. M. Eun be returned to the courtroom by tomorrow 9 a.m. And for the reserve witness, the witness shall also be available in the ECCC complex for tomorrow's session as well. Security personnel are now instructed to bring all the accused persons back to the detention facility and have them returned to the courtroom tomorrow by 9 a.m. The court is adjourned.
សូមក្រោកឈរ